Okay, everyone, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, we are live. Welcome to another My Left Eye live stream, rescheduled from Sunday. Sorry I didn't join you then, had to rearrange my weekend plans. Very short notice, so sorry I wasn't with you then, just wanted to catch up tonight. Hope you're all very well. Let us know how you're doing in the chat. Mithril, good to see you this evening. Hope you're very well. It's good to see you last night as well on Helena's No Justice channel. Quick plug for No Justice as well. Do check out that channel. Awesome content as always from Helena. And hello to Brett James, who's just joined the chat as well. Hope you're both well this evening. Got a few bits coming up. Well, even things that have developed since Sunday when I was originally supposed to do the stream. So, as you can see in the title, worryingly, alarmingly, certain protest groups, including Just Stop Oil and Palestine Action, being proposed to be banned. We're going to be going into that, as well as some of the recent protests that might have passed you by over the last few days or so. Quite a few people getting distracted by the Northern Lights and Eurovision and quite a lot of other news stories, so I'll just be picking up on a few of those as well. The latest on the situation in Gaza as well, of course, as always on the live stream. Take a look at the latest news, also the protests against it, and the ways that we can stand up and show solidarity for Palestine, plus a lot more. So thanks a lot for being with us tonight. Let's just nip over and see Keith for a moment while we wait for a few more people to arrive. And there he is. Busy as always with his fondue. He's going to be featuring in some of the news stories we're going to be taking a look at this evening. Of course, as always. And just a quick reminder, if you've not done so already, please do hit the thumbs up button. Really does help to reach a wider audience for the stream. Hit buttons, etc. And if you want to share it, even across your social media, no harm in that either. Thanks a lot for everybody for your continued viewing, support, subscriptions, etc. Had some new members recently as well, so a very warm welcome to you. Also, a big shout out and thanks to everybody who's recently renewed the memberships, as the vast majority of you have. So, very grateful for that. Much appreciated. I'll be kicking off with something a bit more light-hearted before we delve into the serious issues, of course, as always. And there have even been some developments in the last day or two, including these awful, disgusting attacks on the aid convoys in Gaza. Just a quick plug as well. It's going to be 2 live streams in a row this week, back-to-back nights. I'll be here, of course, tomorrow for PMQs. So please do keep an eye out for that. You can hit the notification bell if you don't want to miss out. And glad you're all doing well in the chat. I'm going to kick off with the latest video from Matt Green, a comedian who's featured on live streams previously, of course. Regular viewers to My Left Eye, I'm sure will be familiar with him. This one landed just today. So let's go over to Matt. That's all for now, Keith. We're all good for fondue.
Boo! Did I scare you? Good. At some point in the second half of this year, we are all going to go to the polls and make a choice. I'm not going to tell you exactly when, because I'm a big tease. and I also know it's the last important decision I'll ever make. It won't just be a choice between Labour or Conservative or even Sunak or Starmer. It will be a choice between the future and the past, good or evil, life or death. Are you scared yet? I remain confident that my party can prevail, not because of our record alone, or indeed at all, but because we are the only party who will be talking about the future. I'm talking rocket ships and computers and robots and flying cars. Bah! Just keeping you on your toes. The world's a crazy place at the moment, isn't it? We've got war, immigration, nuclear weapons. I mean, what if Keir Starmer, who loved Jeremy Corbyn, forgot the nuclear codes? That will never happen to me. They are safely stored in my WhatsApps. The ones I didn't delete. Extremists are exploiting our liberal democratic freedom of speech and freedom to protest by saying that they disagree with us and protesting against us. I'm talking about the worst people in the world. Terrorists, gender activists, cancel culturers, and worst of all, Scottish nationalists. These people are trying to make it morally unacceptable to believe anything different, whereas we believe in accepting the morally unacceptable. This country has been pounded by a series of once-in-a-generation disasters. Boris Johnson, Liz Truss, COVID, Ukraine... Oh God, behind you! Got you. The future's terrifying. AI could destroy 40% of all jobs. I mean, not this job, obviously. No one wants to vote for AI. I mean, no one wants to vote for me either. But plot twist, the future's not just terrible, it's also amazing. AI's great. Imagine in the future a school where every pupil had their own AI tutor personalised to them. And all the teachers were sort of sitting around waiting for their jobs to go away. But that's fine because they don't vote for us anyway. Now, I'm not saying the past doesn't matter, although I sort of did just say that a minute ago. Are you still understanding this? Because I basically wrote 4 different speeches and sort of squashed them together. You can't tell, can you? Because sometimes the worst moments lead to the greatest creations. I mean, without World War II, we'd never have had Dad's Army. Without the Falklands, there'd be no Adrian Mole. And without COVID, we'd never have heard of Joe Wicks. Because although the future is very dangerous, it can also be very exciting. I mean, look, in Britain, we launched the Industrial Revolution, didn't we? I mean, yes, that did eventually, in the end, sort of lead to climate change, so who knows how much innovative damage we can do in the future. Think of all the things we could still invent. I mean, look at Ozempic. That's done very well for Denmark. Why didn't we invent that here? We've got loads of fat people. Despite having 14 years to think about the future, Labour don't have any plans. At least none I've heard about. But then I do only watch GB News. They think they can make you feel bad about the country and just depress you into voting for them, which is unfair because we've done most of the legwork on that. We've made progress in so many areas. I mean, austerity was actually good. Brexit was actually good. Partygate was actually good. Now, don't whatever you do think about that thing I said at conference last year about there being 30 years of failure. I've changed my mind on that. Not like Keir Starmer changes his mind. I've changed my mind in a good way. I believe that at heart we are a nation of optimists because I've never spoken to any British people in a pub. We have pledged to increase defence spending. Jeremy Corbyn wanted to give this country to Russia. There are so many things that I would love to do if only you'd give me the chance. I'd like to cure cancer. I'd like to create a robot NHS. I'd like to teach the world to sing in perfect harmony. Why would you vote against that? But look, it's not just about me. We want you to help.
Great stuff as always there from Matt Green. So I think it just cut off a few seconds before the end, but that's the latest from him. Do check out his YouTube stuff. I think he's still got a live tour going on as well. So if he's coming to a place near you, you might want to check him out. Mostly major towns and cities, of course. Just noticing in the chat, yeah, obviously that was a take on Rishi Sunak's recent scaremongering speech. Actually saw that for the first time on No Justice last night. Had quite a busy day, so I'd not managed to catch up with that. But yeah, it was. It really was something. You'd think he was. I think I pointed this out in the chat yesterday. You know, you'd think he was speaking to a boardroom of shareholders or something, and not trying to appeal to the British public. I know he had the audience there with him at the event where he made the statement, but just really bad. It's hard to know where to begin, I guess. He's trying to act as though the last 15 years can be washed away, and that the more he tries to gloat about the successes of the country, the more cringeworthy it just becomes, because at the end of the day, they've got a terrible record all across the board. You name it, they've ruined it. And they're getting really desperate now as he edges a bit closer to the next general election, of course. So we're only going to see this kind of rhetoric increase. We're only going to see these kind of attempts to sway the public get increasingly desperate. And that speech was just the latest example of that. Just looking in the chat, JC, yeah, you're saying he tried to claim that England was the largest military force after America, but there are many other countries that do have more personnel and stuff. It's just, well, that is why he lies. They're just congenital liars, pathological in that sense. Mithril, yeah, about the collaboration with Turn Left and No Justice. I do watch, Left Turn, and No Justice. That might be a good idea, because, yeah, I really don't like it when we clash schedules. I always like to watch other streamers' live streams live, as I'm sure you do as well. So, yeah, maybe we could work on some sort of collaboration. Who knows? Who knows? I was doing PMQs more or less live until a couple of months ago. And then because of a scheduling conflict, basically, I'm unable to do that anymore. So that might be a good idea. Yeah, thanks a lot for throwing that into the chat. And JC, you saw the Sunak speech live, and it was hella awkward. I mean, he obviously lacks a lot of personality, just as Keir Starmer does. Whatever you might think about Johnson, he definitely had a personality. It might not have been a good one, but this dross, macabre way that Sunak tries to put his point across, he sounds like Tony Blair, and obviously people have pointed out he looks like Roland Rat and other things, but it's just this very charmless persona that he has that makes things he's saying just that little bit worse, Right, I'm going to dip into a couple of articles and clips, etc. now. And let's see what we've got lined up. What was that? Oh, that was the... Yeah, sorry. I left the ding on from the last PMQs. Apologies. I'm just going to pull up the screen. So just quickly touch on some of the latest in Gaza. We'll get onto the groups that could be set to be banned, the protest groups. Just quick touch on the latest. Obviously, I'm sure you've heard there are hundreds of thousands of people fleeing Raffah as Israeli forces have gone back into Jabalia, despite the fact that even Joe Biden has now begun to withdraw military support for Israel over the recent atrocities that they've committed. And recently Netanyahu made kind of a similar yet even more terrifying speech to the public, in saying that even if Israel has to stand alone, they will. It really was scarily fanatical, maniacal in the things that he was saying, reminiscent of some of other far right dictatorships in the past, shall we say. I mean, take your pick, but there's no distinction between what is unfortunately tragically unfolding right now in front of our very eyes and various other atrocities in the past as well, with the exception that in the current war there have been a lot of records broken, of course. Record numbers of journalists killed in such a short amount of time, the proportion of women and children that are being killed, etc. Those stats continue to come in week on week. Won't be reading through this, just a couple of bits. 360,000 people, it says there. That's a lot that fled. 360,000 people. That's like 10 music festivals worth of people. I don't know how you like to try and visualize these kind of numbers. When you hear about things happening to people in the hundreds of thousands and in the millions, it's often difficult to visualize and conceptualize, which just really does go to show and emphasize how awful it is as well. But yeah, if you take your sort of average, pretty big music festival here in the UK, and imagine a crowd like that and multiply it by 10. I think the biggest crowd of people I've ever been in was 125,000 people at a music event, and I try and visualize that, and in this case it'd be, you know, over 3 times more, and that's just wow. It really takes you back. It takes you back when you really do get it in perspective properly. There's also, as I said, been these awful attacks on aid convoys. This is something that I found. I'm just gonna bring the map up while I say this. One thing I found particularly abhorrent and disgusting and cruel and maniacal again was, at the same time, Israel, well, they claimed, even if they did, open up more aid routes on the very same day that happened. On the very same day, they started to attack Raffah. So it was almost a psychotic tease, if you want to put it that way. I was talking about it to a friend of mine, and I described it as the sort of evil right-wing version of "Why are you hitting yourself?" You know, as kids do when they grab someone else's arm and hit their face with their own hand. And it's like that. It's like, oh, you can come and get the aid. Oh no, actually you can't because we're bombing you, and then we've destroyed the aid anyway. It's grotesque. It's sick beyond comprehension. I think, you know, every day I struggle to believe that things like this are happening in the 21st century, in this day and age. I don't know about you, let us know in the chat. Ordinal Father, thanks for joining us in the chat tonight. They do lie through the teeth, and yeah, notice how it doesn't say the word Palestine on those maps. In fact, a lot of the maps that you'll find, they like to try and make some kind of distinction as though Gaza is Hamas, you know, in that kind of sense. I'm going to be talking a bit more about the media's role in this later into the live stream, of course. There have been others recently who've stuck their necks out and gone so far as to criticise media outlets, both in the States and here in the UK, and that is a good point. One thing as well I was thinking about recently was you'll often see Joe Biden stood at a lectern giving a speech, press conference. You'll also see Benjamin Netanyahu doing the same, as well as Rishi Sunak and other heads of state who want to throw in their 2 cents on the matter. However, you'll never see, in a similar vein, a Palestinian representative head of state doing that, obviously, because at the moment, officially, it is still remaining unrecognised as a state. But also the fact that all of the media has been destroyed, all of the nearest Al Jazeera outlets have been destroyed. A record number of journalists have been destroyed. Any infrastructure which probably could have maintained a capacity to do that has been destroyed. The entire population has been left with nothing, of course, by these fascist pigs who are just genocidal, and they want to murder and displace an entire population. But they've got nothing left. There's schools, hospitals, thousands and thousands of homes, of course. I saw some footage earlier today on Twitter where an entire, not just a block, one residential block, an entire area, a neighbourhood, as you will, was destroyed literally in an instant, rigged to blow by a demolition team, and were thousands of people, hundreds of families would have used to dwell, work, play, spend time with their families. Now it's all reduced to nothing, and the same goes for the safe zones. Just on that point, that's another part of this sick tease, this game that they like to play, pretending that things are going to improve and then just doubling down and making things even worse. To call them safe zones when they keep getting attacked, and refugee camps, etc. It's just disgusting. Yeah, but people are starting to see through the propaganda. Even elements of the Western media have started to question the narrative that Israel's putting out. But it's, for so many tens of thousands of people, that's far too little, far too late. Or just tell that to anyone who's suffered under this 75-year occupation. Just looking at a few more pictures there. And they're informed by flyers being dropped from planes, knowing full well that people would have been heading there to try and get to some of the aid which was getting through. Still not nearly enough, but still more than there was before. And there it says the streets are full of sewage. It goes on. Hospitals looking close to running out of power, etc. So that's the latest on that. We'll be coming back to Gaza just shortly. Wanted to go on to that article about the recent protests, and this is one of them. I don't know how much of a coincidence this is. This is the latest Just Stop Oil cultural action. Regular followers of the channel, my left eye, will know that I'm a Just Stop Oil protester myself. I've been on actions with Sue, who you can see on the right there, and she's 82 from Bristol, and she's there with Judith, who's 85 from Swansea. They were released on bail. They've since been charged since this article came out, and they've attacked the Magna Carta, or not directly, of course, but the glass surrounding it. It's one of 4 out of 20 copies left in existence. I believe the famous documents written in 1215. They didn't manage to break the glass. I mean, to be fair, they're both octogenarians, so they did manage to glue themselves to the glass, though. You can see there as they attempted to. But then the day after, it was announced that that is Just Stop Oil, the group, could risk being prescribed as a terrorist organisation alongside Palestine Action. I'm going to delve into that shortly, just go into a few more details about this. So you might notice from the collar, of course, Sue's actually retired a reverend, I believe. And this isn't the first time she's been arrested on protest, as I mentioned. She's a lovely lady, of course. This is just the latest cultural action with JSO. The thing with these kind of protests is always the question, what do you value the most? These great cultural artifacts, or what have you, or the very planet on which we live. So that's the main thing behind this. But a statement from the British Library said its security team intervened to prevent further damage to the case, which was minimal. And to be fair, if you've seen the actual video, then all he did was sort of stand there and ask them to stop and ask the camera person to stop filming, and they said their bit and then proceeded to glue themselves to the glass, so it didn't exactly do a great job. Point being that we've seen in other instances, for example, the Natural History Museum, I don't know if you remember, from around a year-ish ago, the Dippy the Dinosaur action, one of those protesters actually had the ribs broken by a very heavy-handed security guard who threw young Daniel to the ground and broke 2 of his ribs there. So a far cry from that, thankfully. Then obviously just a bit more about the basics about the Magna Carta. Our so-called protected rights. It's written on a very old document, you know, so this can't possibly happen, and the same goes for the Declaration of Independence as well, I'm sure. So I just want to say well done to Judith and Sue. Yeah, might be bumping into them soon myself. And the sign they were holding up said the government is breaking the law. Just the last bit I want to point out about that. Yep, the government made legally binding commitments, of course, at climate summits and other events, and we're just not doing our bit that we're legally obliged to do, so well done to them. But as I said, the following day, this article came out. So the Magna Carta action took place on the Friday. This came out on Saturday, and with Just Up Oil clearly there in the thumbnail. This is from an earlier action phase, not an action that took place on Saturday. I can see a few familiar faces there myself. But this is it. This is the latest shift to the far right. If you don't think that we live in a far right, I dare say, fascist country, I'm going to throw the F word out there. Why the fuck not? Protest groups such as Just Stop Oil and Palestine Action could be banned in a similar way to terrorist organisations under a proposal from the government's advisor on political violence. So they could be prescribed as akin to a terrorist organisation. Lord Wolney has, we're waiting for his report, but the BBC, it says here, have seen extracts of it, and they'll be recommending a new category for prescribing extreme protest groups. It defines these which routinely use criminal tactics to try to achieve their aims. I'm sure if the suffragettes were campaigning today, they'd do the same, or probably worse onto them as well, if women didn't have the vote still. And yet these days we see statues of Pankhurst and all the other great social rights leaders that this country's had. But this is where we're at here in 2024. As I mentioned just a few moments ago, in Just Stop Oil's case, we'll move on to Palestine Action, of course. shortly, but in Just Stop Oil's case, they're just asking for the government to conform to its legally binding commitments and to stop issuing new fossil fuels, follow scientific recommendations, etc. It's not too much to ask. It's not an extreme demand. Is my main point. What I'm trying to get across here. There's nothing extreme about that whatsoever. If people were doing similar things or taking part in protests that were actually extreme, then that would be a totally different matter. There are still minority extremist groups out there, including hard right groups. So if you want extremists, that's where you look. You don't look to Palestine Action and Just Stop Oil and other environmental protest groups, Insulate Britain, Extinction Rebellion, etc. This is rigged up in Scotland. Think there might be similar repercussions happening over in the States if this goes through over here. Who knows? They've got climate defiance, are one of the main ones that springs to mind in terms of climate protest over there as well. What about Greenpeace? They did that action at Rishi Sunak's house while he was away, of course, just last year. So the Home Office said ministers would consider the recommendations and said militant groups like Palestine Action. Oh my goodness, militant! Straight out the doors. Militant groups like Palestine Action and Just Stop Oil. Militant. I've said before, it implies balaclava wearing, AK-47 wielding, camouflage clad people who they normally have they call themselves freedom fighters, whatever, actual militant groups, militia, as we say. Just Stop Oil, militant group. It's ridiculous. It's ludicrous. It's beyond gaslighting. It's beyond lies. It's beyond a joke. And the same applies to Palestine Action. He says they're using criminal tactics to create mayhem and hold the public and workers to ransom without fear of consequence. Of course, groups like JSO are always held accountable for any action that they take. That's part of the nature of these protests. You'll never see JSO running off and being literally, chased by the police after they've done something trying to evade arrest, etc. Ridiculous. Banning terror groups has made it harder for their activities to plan crimes. That approach should be extended to extreme protest groups too. What are we going back to here? Can you think of any other times in history when certain groups might have banned protest and other political parties? For example, answers in the chat. Palestine Action says its actions are in line with most of the British public who want an arms embargo between the UK and Israel, and the proposal should not deter their campaign. In Palestine Action's case, when you consider the Palestine demonstrations, these are your straight up protest marches and demonstrations. Essentially, there's no gluing to anything, there's no locking on, there's no blocking roads, etc. They're trying to conflate things yet again. We're in the era of conflation. Down is up is down, left is right, and vice versa. We're living in the age of vice versa and gaslighting, of course. So that's all that they are. You'll see a large amount of people congregating and then going on a march, in the case of the UK, through multiple cities, but in London's case that gets up to the hundreds of thousands, and then there might be further congregation around a stage as people give testimonies and speeches and whatnot, and we know the way it goes down. There's nothing militant about that whatsoever. To even attempt to use that kind of language, I think, is just completely fucking insulting to people's natural intelligence. But of course, a Telegraph reader or Spectator, whatever, would lap it up. We'll have to see about the outcome of this report. Hopefully this gets rejected as the complete and utter pile of shite that it actually is. And we'll try and keep you posted, of course, as always. A Home Office spokesperson has said, I'll just say finally on this, extremism of any kind has no place in our society, and we will not tolerate tactics that set out immediate threaten or cause disruption to the law-abiding majority. In recent months, we have also witnessed a small number of protesters display violent and hateful behaviour, and the police have our full support in tackling extremism and hate crime. We are considering the report's recommendations extremely carefully and will respond in due course. Oh, Christ, it's fingers down the back of the throat kind of stuff here. It really is. Facepalm City. Apologies for those of you who wake up in the morning with a red forehead on account of potentially facepalming from the words contained in those quotes from the Home Office, but as I said, if you don't think we're living in a far-right country, just take a look at that. I did say that there were a large amount of protests going on in cities. Of course, these encampments, the Gaza support, the ceasefire in Palestine, protest campuses have been set up in multiple universities as well as others all over and across the world. Going to be talking about that just shortly. Where should we go to next? I'm just going to have a quick look at my bookmarks. Okay, a quick bit of good news actually, yeah. I just wanted to point this out. I saw this earlier on the old Twitter there. Ignore this letter. That's just a douchebag's wet dream, really. Don't get me started on Elon Musk. We'll be here all night. So you remember a few weeks ago, obviously. It was reported that Yanis Varoufakis was banned from Germany. Also, Dr. Abu Sita, Ghassan Abu Sita, has won his appeal after weeks of difficulties, it says. His lawyer, Alexander Gorsky, ICJP lawyers, and ELS Legal, that is, they succeeded in challenging Germany's countrywide travel ban on the war surgeon. He's, of course, got a lot of first-hand accounts of what things are actually like on the ground in Gaza, in hospitals, having treated many of the wounded and, of course, tragically, a lot of those who have died as well. And if you really do want to hear the true scale of this atrocity, I suggest you go to people like Dr. Abu Sita, but that's a great victory for him. So after returning from working in Gaza hospitals as a witness to war crimes, he faced a hostile press and eventually a travel ban by German authorities. Was on one of the live streams a couple of weeks ago where we showed his statement. I believe he was just in a taxi on his way back to the back home. He'd been refused entry, had his passport taken from him for a while. He was interrogated for hours as well, as being denied his freedom of expression, as the tweet says, and freedom to travel when he was refused entry to France, Netherlands and Germany as he tried to spread the word about the war crimes he witnessed. This censorship is just one of the worst parts of this entire propaganda that we're unfortunately being subjected to at the moment, where Israel-Palestine is concerned. But now it says with the ban overturned, Ghassan should be able to travel freely around the Schengen area once again. But that just goes to show what the overbearing weight of public opinion at the moment can achieve. And he, of course, had a great legal backing as well. And there he is. And a lot of congratulatory comments under the tweet as well. I won't go into those just yet. We've got quite a bit to get through on the live stream tonight. So it's not all grim. Did want to bring you something a little bit more positive as well, as of course we always start with a more light-hearted clip. Where to next? Yeah, before I get into the deeper nitty-gritty of the recent events in Gaza, this is worth note, I believe. The chair of Momentum of the faction of the Labour Party, the actual left-wing people in the Labour Party, Hilary Shan, has quit to campaign against Labour MPs at the next election. Quite interesting. We've seen Tory defections recently, 2 of those in as many weeks, and now this. So in terms of the Overton window within the Labour Party itself, I think this speaks volumes. And in leaving, she said that Labour has become Tory light. As we all know, of course, she attacks Keir Starmer's handling of the Israel-Hamas war. And of course, although he did make some gains at the last election, he really was hampered. And it's believed that at the last local elections recently, and of course, well, I say believed, it's evident in the statistics when you go through it in a granular detail that his stance on the Israel-Gaza war really does come down to that a lot as well. So one of the chairs has quit, says he's had a disgusting response to the war in Gaza. Hilary Shan, who's also a councillor in Worthing, said she'll now join the We Deserve Better campaign, headed by journalist Owen Jones, which aims to he quit Labour recently as well, of course. We did do a bit about that as well. So the group aims to oust prominent Labour MPs at the next election and put independent and Green Party candidates in their place. So I can but wish them the very best of luck with that, of course. That's something I've been encouraging for a while. That's not a campaign that I've actually joined or been a part of. I've been saying for a while, vote for your socialist independent candidate or Green Party candidate. Every constituency for the first time in a general election will have the Green option as well, so that'll be a very interesting factor, as I've said before. I'm not sure if Andrew Feinstein, who's standing against Starmer directly in Holborn and St Pancras, is part of the We Deserve Better campaign, but I do wish him the very best of luck as well. And they are he's hosting, I should say, I just remembered, I saw this come up earlier as well, before I go through the rest of this article. Just quickly want to put it your way whilst it's still in my head. He's hosting a huge get-together in London to talk about what you can do to support Palestine this coming Thursday as well. So if you don't follow him on Twitter already, Andrew Feinstein, please do. I really wish him every success in winning the seat, of course, in the general election in Holborn St Pancras. Even if Labour did win, that'd be, kind of silver lining to the cloud if Labour did manage to get a small majority. However, Keir Starmer himself lost his seat. That'd be something else. Certainly would. However, before I go off on too much of a tangent, so back to this article about momentum, or one of the momentum chairs, I should say. The announcement comes off the back of a widely successful local election campaign for Labour. This is a Sky article, I should say. I wouldn't call it that, seeing as they didn't even manage to mop up half of the councillors that the Tories lost, less than 50%. I did, of course, do a bit about that as well recently, or just the day that the results came out. In fact, if you've not seen it, or mind a bit of self-promotion / shilling, do go and check that out as soon as you finish listening to the stream, of course. Bookmark it or whatever, put it on your playlist. But where it suffered its losses in its traditional council seats, especially in areas with large Muslim populations, over its stance on the Israel-Hamas conflict. And I've said I've been pissed off. You'll have to forgive me for the source on this, but I've mentioned before how much it pisses me off. It pisses a lot of people off. I'm sure it pisses a lot of Muslims off as well, because they know as well as anybody else does that there's a lot of support for Palestine outside of Muslim communities, from Christians, from Jews alike, people of all faiths and no faith. And this further attempt to just make it that binary, ones and zeros, that only Muslims support Palestine, that's real hacker. That's a bit hacky there, bit of hackery there from Sky. So polling shows that Labour's set to be the biggest party at the next election, but not have an overall majority. So we're a far cry from just before the local election, where everyone in Labour was beating the chest, expecting to just stroll through. Definitely not the case this time around. So that's Hilary Shan. To be fair, I'm surprised that this hasn't happened sooner. I'm surprised that Momentum still wish to remain part of the Labour Party. You have, of course, you've still got the SRG, and my point being that it's are they really putting their time and effort to the best use as they could by remaining in the Labour Party? Because under Starmer, obviously it's become so dictatorial that anything that they say or do will just largely fall upon deaf ears. Of course, there's been a mass exodus of membership from Labour in the hundreds of thousands as well, so it does surprise me that they are still hanging on in there as a faction of Labour. But good on them, for doing it this side of the election rather than after the next election, at least. So as long as they've, done that between 2019 and 2024, then they're going in the right direction. It might just, be a little later than some, including myself, might have imagined. I didn't let the door hit me on the way out, let's put it that way. So just a final quote from her. She says she spent 8 years campaigning for Labour locally and nationally, holding many elected roles within the party and as a Labour councillor, but I can no longer in good conscience stay in a party which under Starmer's leadership is being taken further and further away from its founding values and is now simply a Tory-like party at best. Starmer has junked every one of his policy pledges to fix this broken Britain, and I cannot look at my constituents in the eye and tell them to vote for a Labour government, which will only let them down. I've wrestled with these issues. Labour's disgusting response to the horrors in Gaza has proved clarity. I cannot remain a member of a party whose leader endorsed a war crime by Israel and even now won't call for a suspension of UK arms to Israel and condemn its government's atrocities. Let's just take a quick look at this clip. I'm not sure if there might be a bit of buffering here. Bear with. protesters outside the Labour offices themselves. We demand a ceasefire. Yeah, that's buffering soup. I mean, that this particular outlet has a bit of a reputation for that, shall I say. Lefty's Pragues, thanks a lot for joining us tonight. Hope you're very well. Thanks for joining us in the chat. And Mr. Pike Bishop, welcome back, of course. Hope you're well this evening. Thanks a lot for joining us. Starmer's also coming for criticism. It says shortly after the war began in Gaza when he appeared to, they've been very selective with the language there, give Israel backing over cutting off water and power supplies to the Strip. He did do that. He directly did that. I've used that clip in a few things. Obviously, I see it's still doing the rounds on social media, and to this day. So it wasn't taken out of context. He didn't misspeak. He directly said it, and he was asked and pressed on it a few times by Nick Ferrari. He directly said that cutting off water and power to Israel should be a right that Israel have. He said it. We know he said it. He's not even the Prime Minister. I'm not going to use the word yet, because that remains to be seen, of course. But if he does become Prime Minister, then you can expect a lot more of that. And then it's just reminding us about the amendment on the motion, of course. We've been through that over the last couple of months. Just finally, a Momentum spokesperson says it's a sad state of affairs for Keir Starmer's Labour Party when committed activists like Hillary, who work so hard to deliver progressive change for their communities, no longer feel it's the place for them. Momentum remains focused on organising for a democratic Labour Party which views its members and core voters as an asset, not an inconvenience. That's true. I mean, he not only takes Labour voters for granted, he sees most of them as an inconvenience. He's more or less told everyone to fuck off, and now he's wondering why the numbers are dwindling after he's thrown so many people out of the party and made several decisions which have seen members leave en masse as well. So I'm going to go over to some clips now. Oh, sorry about that. It was slightly maligned on your screens. Apologies if you couldn't see all of the text there. It's that bloody Rupert Murdoch's fault anyway. It drifted to the left. Just by pure nature. Ba-bum. So we went over what has happened recently in Raffah, of course, and I mentioned these attacks on the aid trucks in some of the articles. It'll say apparent and unconfirmed, things like this, of course, but if you know, you're looking for a bit of evidence, this is it. This is the aftermath of the unfortunate scene in Raffah. Hundreds of boxes there, probably thousands, and every single one thrown out of the trucks. That doesn't matter anyway, because I've seen other clips where there's been sugar poured into the diesel tanks of the trucks. You're going to see in this clip now, as he approaches the truck, the tyres are slashed all of the tyres, and so many people are reliant on this aid, and these sick racists have just spread so much destruction around. It's terrible. It really is. I've already seen this clip a couple of times before I lined it up for the stream, but genuinely, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, I'm sitting here aghast at the humanity, the lack of humanity in these kind of actions. It's quite saddening indeed. It's very sickening as well. If you're the kind of person who's happy to let a child starve to death based on their religion, then you are nothing more than a sick racist. And I'm not just saying that as a matter of opinion. That's a statement of fact. It really is. Let us know your thoughts on that as well. I'm just going to go over a few of your recent comments as well. Thanks a lot for all of you for being so civil, polite and cordial in the chat as always, I should say, whether you commented on what I'm yapping on about or talking amongst yourselves. Pike Bishop, Mr. Pike Bishop, you think I'm correct about the society we live in, unfortunately. You think it's only going to get worse after Keith and his gang don't improve anything. Yeah, and that goes with this ongoing aid situation in Gaza as well. Certainly does. Bird's Nest Rat Fest, thanks a lot for joining us in the chat also. And Lefty's Pragues, this certainly has to be a crime against humanity. And yeah, Bird's Nest Rat Fest, of course, completely correct. Starmer's the other Tory party, Tory Light. It's not even Tory Light. It's just a mirror. It's just a mirror to the just change the colour of the tie. That's all that you get. But it's a far cry from the former leader of the opposition, and we're going to hear one of his recent orations now, of course. If only we had someone akin to Mr. Jeremy Corbyn at the helm of the Labour Party still.
You, every single one of you, being here tonight to bear witness of the horror that is now going on in Raffah. 1 million.
Just a quick shout out / plug. This clip comes from not the mainstream media, not the MSM. They've put this one together. This isn't a compilation of mine, just a quick shout out and credits there to not the MSM.
People kettled into Raffah whilst the Israeli forces continue the bombardment. 34,000 already killed. 11,000 of those at least are children. And increasingly, the response in Western Europe and the United States is to attack those who demonstrate in support of those who are under attack. Well, that's why we're here tonight, because we are determined to bring about a justice and to bring about an end to the occupation. And so the US and Europe might attack the International Criminal Court. Then Germany might ban Yanis Varoufakis from speaking at a Palestinian event. France might ban Dr. Abu Sitta speaking, but we will carry on whatever they say and whatever their answer is to that. The reality is not going to go away. That millions of people all over the world, just like us here tonight in Whitehall, are meeting, marching and demonstrating in support of the Palestinian people. And I want to say a thank you to all those around the world that have given us so much hope during this time. Students in campuses all across the USA, those in London at SOAS and UCL who are having encampments outside. Because they are the future, they are the people that are showing the way. So be prepared to be here many times more. We ain't going away, we ain't disappearing, we're standing with the Palestinian people.
great speech. That was, of course, recorded before today's announcement about that decision for Dr. Agitator being overturned. But my point is, we were saying just earlier in the stream, I was talking about the power of protest and how collectively, when we come together in solidarity, we can achieve great things together. And I think that is just case in point right there. As Corbyn was saying himself, this is something that we have to keep up, that we can't ever, as it says on your screen now, we can't stop talking about Palestine. We can't stop meeting and discussing what we can do to support Palestine, and we can achieve things. And it's through that solidarity and togetherness that the decision that came out today to overturn Dr. Agitator's ban from Germany can happen, and even bigger things than that can happen. So, having looked through, the finer points, the most recent stories in the conflict, I want to move into the next element of, next part of the live stream, to be a lot more positive and just about what we can achieve and show you a lot of people speaking truth to power. We're going to take a look at these great protests that have been going on at the university campuses and giving shouts out to the universities that have been doing so as well. Just quickly, before we do that, as well as show you other forms of wonderful protests as well. Not sure if you've come across this one recently from Anam Kaisar, who's an SNP MP, and this was a great point during the debate on Gaza in the House of Commons.
Hospitals bombed, homes bombed, ambulances bombed, churches bombed, mosques bombed, UN schools bombed, refugee camps bombed, factories bombed, and the bombing continues. Gaza is under siege from the air, and the F-35 stealth bomber, often referred to as the most lethal fighter jet in the world, is being used. Parts for this fighter jet, the laser targeting system and the weapons release system, are made in British factories, which means that we simply do not know if those weapons are being used by Israeli authorities in the massacre of families and children in Gaza. Politics is all about choices. The UK government has the choice to stop or suspend arms export licenses to Israel, and there's precedent for this. In 2014, the current Foreign Secretary, who was the then Prime Minister, suspended 12 arms export licenses in light of evidence of human rights abuse. It is morally corrupt, outrageous, and sickens me to my core that the UK continues to sell arms to Israel.
Yeah, and even Biden has, as I mentioned, started to reduce its arms sales to Israel, but Sunak's just holding steadfast, providing the usual responses to those points as they're put to him. Just a quick reminder, quick bit of self-promotion as well. Going to be back in the House of Commons tomorrow for PMQ's reaction, analysis and commentary, so please do join us for that tomorrow evening. Hit the notification bell so that you don't miss out on that or any of the other content on the channel. A lot more content to come as well. And just a very further warm welcome to all of the members who've joined us on the stream and in the chat this evening. It's great to see those emoticons there next to your names, and you're all very welcome here this evening, whether you're a new member, returning, or it's the first time you've ever heard of the channel. Thanks a lot for being here. Okay, so on to some of the protests now. This one might have caught your eye. Don't worry, in the build-up, this is a first on My Left Eye live stream. The first time I've had to assure people before we go into a clip that there isn't going to be any nudity. Just to make that very clear. You'll see what I'm on about in a second when I play you this protest from Code Pink called Israel Lies Exposed. There's a clue in the title there, of course. But just to be very clear to the terms of service, to the algorithm gods listening, there is no nudity contained within the following clip from Code Pink. Intriguing.
To put forth from the State Department how the weapons were being used, and we were going to be ready to expose the lies of that report. Well, no, they didn't even report it, so we're going to stick with the theme and expose some other lies.
Lie. Israel has a right to defend itself. Lie. Israel is not a racist state. Babies were beheaded October 7th. History began on October 7th. Anti-Zionism equals anti-Semitism. Israel is a good ally. War leads to peace. Israel is a democracy. Student encampments are violent. There is no genocide.
I've got my tongue firm largely into my cheek as I make this this other comment. I should have also warned you before the clip started that it oh god, I don't know if I'm going to forgive myself for this one. It contains flashing images. Thank you.
In Gaza. No evidence of war crimes. No famine in Gaza.
Ceasefire now.
Ceasefire now.
Ceasefire
Let Gaza live. Let Gaza live.
Let Gaza live.
Let Gaza live.
Let Gaza live.
Lovely bit of music at the end there. So that's just, sort of something slightly different there. I just thought that was a great protest. Lefty's Prague's what time? Because the notification bell doesn't always work. If that's for tomorrow's PMQs, that's going to be it's still as yet unconfirmed, but it will probably be between sometime between 7 and 9 p.m. Depending on how busy a day I have tomorrow. Apologies. Should just say, apart from doing the YouTube channel, of course I am self-employed, so I do have busy days on occasion, but I'll do my best to get that scheduled. I'll also, as I normally do, be posting in the community about it, so try and keep an eye out for that as well once I've confirmed the time. Thanks a lot for your question. Life is Prague's. Politics Clive, welcome to the chat. Yeah, bit of a tongue-in-cheek gag there. No problem. Let us know what you think about that protest, of course. And moving on to these great protests that have been happening in universities, I'm going to quickly dash through this list because credit where credit's due. This is a list of the universities where they're taking place. I also want to say, if you know of or find out from me reading this list that there's one taking place where you live, please do what you can to go and show solidarity with those protesters whenever you can at your earliest convenience. So that'll really help with their morale as well. So I'm gonna go through a list of very quickly the universities in the UK that are holding these encampments, which I think's a great way to protest. There have been mixed results pertaining to the reaction to them. Of course, we've seen escalations and violence in the States. Fortunately, we haven't seen the likes of that here in the UK yet, but these are taking place all over the world, and this could be a big movement. This could be a big part of sustained protests in support of Palestine. And I'm going to go back over to the screen now. So I mentioned in a tweet. So these are the first. There's 28 altogether. So that's the first group on the list. Queen's University, Belfast, Bangor, Birmingham, Leicester, Lancaster, Durham, Kent, Nottingham, Lincoln, Sussex, Queen Mary, King's College and LSE. Also Warwick, Bristol, Leeds, Newcastle, Manchester, go Manchester, Sheffield, Swansea, Goldsmiths, University College London, Edinburgh, Cambridge, Oxford, Aberdeen, Liverpool and SOAS. That's the School of Oriental and African Studies in London. So first of all, well done to all those students who are encamped there. I am very fortunate to be friends with people who are studying at some of the aforementioned universities and taking part, I should say, in these encampments and or showing solidarity with them as well. So well done to all of them. The protest power is certainly strong in the youth, and that's been fantastic to see. So I will now just highlight a couple of those that have been taking place over here in the UK. This is a picture from Oxford University. It's the world's oldest university, I believe. And you can see they've got the projection there onto one of the buildings. Disclose, divest, we will not stop, we will not rest. And that's the main message, that's the clarion call. That is what the students in all of those universities are calling for. Financial divestment away from Israel and to stop contributing towards this mass occupation, collective punishment, genocidal atrocity, I should say. Universities also line up jobs in the arms industry at the behest of these very rich and powerful companies, especially those who are coming from the science faculties and going into work. BAE Systems, for example, will be people like that. And to allow them to sort of harvest, the youth, all of these bright young people, and then turn their talents into something so evil, shouldn't happen, and they shouldn't be given the opportunity to do so. The same goes for fossil fuel companies with the environmental climate crisis, of course, with companies like Shell and BP. So here's some testimony from one of the students, foreign student, forgive me, I'm not sure if they're from North America or Canada, but this is what they had to say down there. And a lot of people call any form of student, it's a misnomer really, of course, but they call them stupid. They say that they don't know what they're talking about. That's a nonsense. That's just right-wing gammon, poppycock, really. If you speak to the youth of today, a lot of them really are clued up. A lot of them really are very switched on to what is happening. They're very alert. They want to educate themselves, and they are pissed off. They're pissed off with the future that is facing them, because as every generation goes by, things in society, definitely in the UK, get worse and worse, and things look even bleaker for them. But at the end of the day, it's just because of pure empathy and the fact that they've got a heart and they don't want to see this happening to anybody. So this is what this young protester had to say about that.
Demands broadly start with disclosure and divestment. As of right now, students do not have access to where their money is going when they pay tuition fees to this university. So crucially, our first demand is full disclosure of financial investments.
Crucially about Israel, right?
Well, we want to know where all of the money is going. We think that that's key for students to know where their money is going, whether it's about Israel or not. But then, with this knowledge, we would like to pursue full divestment from two things. First, from all arms manufacturing companies. Whether it's the current genocide in Gaza or other armed conflict around the world, our university should not be investing in that. This is a situation where we should be learning and contributing to education and a safe community, not to international conflict. And secondly, we request and demand that the university divest from all holdings in any entities that sponsor or are complicit in Israeli occupation, apartheid, and the current genocide in Gaza.
Yeah, sorry to interject there. Just wanted to point out that it's not a request, it is a demand, because when you with what is actually happening, how can you just be perceived to politely tap someone on the shoulder and ask for it to happen and expect for it to happen, and then just not mind if you get ignored? The things that are happening today are the sort of things that are supposed to have been eradicated from society, from history. This is why we have things like Remembrance Day, for example. This is why we hold remembrance to all those who lost their lives in the Holocaust, for example. And we're just seeing history repeating over and over again. So no, it's not a request, it is a demand, because it has to happen. It has to happen.
Additionally, we have boycott demands, key of which is the demand to stop banking with Barclays, which the university currently does. Barclays has been complicit in the architecture of Israeli apartheid, and so that's a key demand from the boycott, divestment, and sanctions global movement. And our last demand is that the university commits to a Palestinian-led rebuilding of the Gazan higher education sector.
Okay. So how much link up have you had with the movement in the United States and with other student protests in the UK?
Yeah, so crucially, I mean, the US movement set off a global chain of reaction, and we're so excited to be a part of that and thankful to the US encampments for what they began. We've had a lot of support from them in terms of logistics, general comradeship, giving us tips and tricks. But really, the UK movement has also learned a lot from them in terms of how our goals are so similar. Although the US and the UK have different contexts, the UK government is similarly complicit in Israeli war crimes, and so too are our institutions of higher education. So we learned a lot from them in terms of our demands, how to engage with our governments, and how to mobilize students. In the UK, we also have really collaborated with other universities. Oxford is so proud to be launching in tandem with Cambridge. This is the first time in social movement history that Oxford and Cambridge have launched a campaign on the same day.
And that's a very important point, just going back to the efficacy of solidarity and coming togetherness. And although it was in an entirely different context, believe me, but just for demonstratory purposes, the way that Genghis Khan was so, I know this might be a bad example, but even though there were linguistic barriers between himself and other tribes at the time, all he had to do was hold up one stick and snap it, and then hold a bunch of sticks, 10, 15 or so, and try to get anyone to try and snap them at the same time, and they couldn't. And that's the sort of analogy, if you will, of the efficacy of solidarity if we all come together. Individual campaigns are perfectly fine in their own right, of course. I'm not criticising any of the individual campaigns or charities that are supporting Palestinians at the moment, but this really has to be the thing that happens if ceasefire in Gaza is going to happen, if the other demands such as divestment are going to happen. It will have to come through idea sharing, solidarity, physically coming together to protest as well. And that'll be so much more effective than just each campaign on its own. And it's supportive as well. It's a support network. Just quickly for comparison, Just Stop Oil as a protest group are part of an international network as well. This young lady mentioned what's been going on in the States, as well as other countries, and within that A22 network, it's essentially a worldwide network of different organisations who ultimately have the same goal, but there's a lot of idea sharing happening there between these factions. Last Generation in Europe as well, just for example. And speaking of Europe, as he does another amazingly smooth segue that you didn't even notice, I'm going to take a look at one of the other campus sit-ins, although There's been a slightly different vibe there. As I said, it's not all been peaceful and passive in every nation in the world. Fortunately, it's not kicked off here anywhere in the UK, despite some very minor and pathetic efforts from pro-Zionist so-called counter-protesters. But this particular piece, I should point out that interview came from Al Jazeera as well, if you can't see the logo, just to give credit where it's due. But take a look at their roundup of what happened at the Dutch campuses as well. It's a completely different vibe, just to sort of genuinely, this is a genuine pre-warning, not a tongue-in-cheek one, like the other clip was. There are some slightly heavier scenes here. Nothing that will break terms of service, of course, but just to let you know, this is the kind of thing that's been going down in Amsterdam and other places in the Netherlands.
If the university board would like to demonstrate that they want to regain the confidence of its staff and students, then they should start by cutting ties and establishing shared governance.
We want to condemn the police violence that was unleashed upon the students, and we want to call upon the university's board to, in the future, enter negotiations and discussions rather than immediately calling the police.
International law is being taught here. We have a Center for Genocide Studies on this campus. These are things that as scholars we teach our students, and then when there is a genocide unfolding, there is impunity and no response. So we as staff, we say we need our institutions to step up, stop doing harm and stop being complicit.
Yeah, as you saw, completely different response from the authorities over there. Hope that situation does improve. Of course, those scenes of escalation weren't pleasant to see happening, and let's hope that gets resolved. It's not the first example of the Dutch police being heavy-handed. Again, going back to recent environmental protests, there's a lot of linear situations between the two groups, the two different types of protest group. That's why not just because of my own personal bias, but in a sociological sense, there are these parallels between pro-Palestine groups and environmental groups. But my point was that when the Dutch version of XR, basically Dutch XR, blocked the highway for a sustained period for a month to get the government eventually to cave in and put these bans on new licenses, the police were very, very, very heavy-handed. The scenes of young people having their hair pulled, dragged across the street, beaten with batons, similar but worse, unfortunately, than as you saw in those clips there. Utterly disgusting. People just exercising their free right to protest, and that sort of thing really shouldn't happen in this day and age. Absolutely not. Just coming back over to the UK now, and a clip from someone who attended the most recent protest in London. We always like to point out just how far removed Zionism is from genuine Judaism, and hear from members of the Jewish bloc and other people of Jewish faith on the protests And this next gentleman, I think, particularly makes a fantastic point as well. That's something that I want to share with you. And if you really want to know just how ridiculous the Israeli propaganda machine is, you know, then you only have to talk to people who really are of the genuine Jewish faith to get the true story. And this is just the latest example of that.
Why is it important for you to be here today?
Well, I'm Jewish, I'm Israeli. My parents were the only survivors of their families from the Holocaust. They both survived Auschwitz. I'm not going to support genocide, am I? I'm here with the Palestinians, and we are here with Palestine because we don't believe that what the British government is doing is correct. The British government is supporting this genocide. It's arming Israel, it's financing Israel. BBC and the other media here is supporting genocide. This is illegal, this is immoral. We don't agree with it. We will never agree with it. And as Jews, and myself as Israeli, I am totally against it, and we will continue to be against it. There are now more than 60 such events in the whole of Britain. People don't want to support this. They are against this government on so many other issues, but especially on this one.
And also, this didn't start on October the 7th. In 1948, Palestinian villages, hundreds of them, were demolished. Thousands of innocent Palestinian men, women and children were slaughtered, and 750,000 Palestinian refugees were created. That's when it started, and it hasn't stopped since.
And that's the truth, and more power to those who speak it. Yeah, and these protests in London just increasing in size. We're hearing more and more powerful testimonies from those on the marches, as well as doing the speeches, as well, of course. And I think that's very powerful. It's also very brave of Jews to openly come out and criticise Israel, despite the amount of power and influence that the Israeli propaganda machine might appear to have. That is, fortunately, not getting through to the wider public, and it is people speaking up, as these gentlemen and that lady have done so at this most recent march, that really does put the truth into people's ears. So more power to them. Okay, going to be rounding things off not too shortly. Going to be ending with another comedy clip, of course, just before we go to that. Most of you have probably seen that recent appearance by Aaron Bastani from Novara Media on Piers Morgan. Michael was, of course, fantastic and gave some great responses to what's the best way to describe Piers Morgan's particular brand of so-called journalism, despite his visceral attempts to throw him off guard, as well as the other pro-Israeli fella on the panel whose name has escaped me again. I can see the face. I'm sure I've seen him in clips and stuff before, but his name escapes me, unfortunately. But he really did put up a good show. However, this is a different. This is from a different appearance. This is something I'm not sure if you've come across yourselves, but it really was fantastic, from Rania Kalek, who appeared. Probably said a piece in a more kind of outspoken, you might say controversial way than Michael Walker did in his appearance, but let us know what you think about these sentiments in the chat. And it's essentially about the justification of resistance to occupation, comparing that to other similar incidents in history in the past. Good evening, Vicky Clee. Thanks a lot for joining us in the chat this evening. Hope you're very well too. Great to see another member back again. Thanks for joining us. And yeah, quickly, just before I go over to this clip, speaking of members, you can join the channel for just 99p. The 2 tiers were recently combined in to one, so you get all of the benefits of both packages for just the low price of 99p. Check out the perks by hitting the join button. You get some exclusive content, etc., as well as static emojis, which you're free to use on live streams such as this one. So please do consider supporting the channel in that way, or with super chats, super thanks if you're watching on a replay. And also, if you're feeling particularly generous, you can go to the Buy Me a Coffee page. Description is in the link for the video and of the channel, where you can show solidarity for just the price of a tasty hot beverage. Thank you so much for joining us here tonight. And Mithril, oh, thank you so much. That's amazing. Thank you so much. 10 gifted memberships there. Wow. I think that takes us over 50 active members. That's fantastic. So hope all of you enjoy those perks. Please do check them out. Doc Davis, Crisco88, Not the River Nile, Steph, Brett James, Jake, S, Bill Bilson, Becca A, and Laura Powers. Great to see you as members of the channel. Thanks again to Mithril for showing that solidarity. Great to have you here this evening. Very generous as always. Without much ado, we'll go straight into this clip from Rania Kalek. I always like it when people stick it to Piers Morgan, because I'm sure he thinks he's very persuasive, convincing, as well as effective as a presenter, despite the amount of crap that falls out of his mouth. But she really does hold no quarter here. Might just have to pause a couple of moments at the end where they're both talking over one another. It's not a particularly long clip anyway, but I'm sure they'll enjoy this if you're not a particularly big fan of Piers Morgan, as I certainly am not.
100 journalism professors at elite universities across the country are asking the New York Times to review their investigative reporting on October 7th. A lot of what we heard are lies. You don't talk about that on the show. Israeli media has reported on a lot of those lies too. Moreover, Piers, if you're going to say what Israel's doing is a response to October 7th, then could October 7th perhaps have been a response to what Israel's been doing to Palestinians, which nobody was covering?
You'll notice, I don't know if you'll have noticed, I certainly have, not just recently but over the years, the thinking face that he's got on there. Just look at his face. They're pretending to listen to the point that the guest is putting across. Any guest, and not just in this case, but going back through his entire career. And you know that within the first sort of millisecond of the point that's being put to him has been spoken, he's dismissed it psychologically, in his head, mentally, however you want to put it. And this face is the face of him trying to queue up his latest round of whataboutery. What about the hypocrisy of this? What about this? What about that? That's all it turns into with Piers Morgan. He's a whataboutist and a shy-talk at the highest order. So that's, I don't know if it'll be something that you can't unsee in the future, but that's certainly something that springs into my mind whenever I see this face, apart from just please get rid of the face as well. But that's basically, that's his main tactic, that's his main weapon, isn't it? The whataboutery. The thinking bigots Tucker Carlson. Yes, Mithril. Yes, great point. Also, thanks a lot for that suggestion earlier. I will try and look into that if I can't get into touch with No Justice directly. Should just say, Helena, if you are listening to the stream on a replay, then feel free to get in contact with me at my email, myleftyuk@gmail.com. And if you're up for any form of collaboration, yeah, I'd love that. The same with Left Turn. So please do get in touch, or anyone else who's listening. If you do left-based content, then let's get together. As I've said a few times on the stream now, solidarity is what counts. And yeah, whatever message that we're trying to get out to our audience, let's work together and do that. That'd be fantastic. Thanks a lot again for that suggestion. So back to the face, back to Mr. Morgan, Captain Shitehawk.
On October 4th or October 5th or October 6th, what I hear here is no empathy for people undergoing a genocide. And I'm sitting here and you're asking me to condemn people who are fighting.
I like the faces on the lady to the left of Rania, who's speaking at the moment. The "you go girl" face. Notice how she's speaking the pure truth here. She's absolutely preaching. She's nailing it, and neither of the other two panelists want to interject while she's on such a roll. I think that's fantastic to see Piers Morgan sticking it from three ladies as well, because lest we forget his views on gender, and there have certainly been some fairly well based accusations of misogyny made against Piers Morgan as well. So that's fantastic to see that. Morgan's sitting pretty on his current gig, Vicky Clee saying in the chat. Thanks a lot for your comment. Does he even interview on other topics other than Israel-Palestine? If so, those clips never go viral. Well, obviously it's a massive talking point at the moment. I've seen him, obviously he's on the wrong side of the spectrum where opinions concerned on other issues, of course. One I just mentioned was the gender issue. He certainly doesn't like trans or non-binary people and has been very outspoken about that. He's pretty much your typical, unless you are middle-aged, slightly podgy, red-faced male with atypical opinions on everything, then he doesn't want to know. He doesn't want to know. He's certainly one for the so-called war on woke, which is, as I've mentioned before, just being plain anti-progressive without wanting to say that you're anti-progressive. Yeah. So he does put his foot in it on other topics as well, but as you point out, they don't quite go as viral than other things do. I, for one, only come across what he says on clips. This one in particular is from social media as well. I wouldn't take the time out of my day to directly watch his show, which is now only available online as well because of poor ratings, decreasing ratings, why it's been taken off of television, Talk TV.
For their survival. I don't condemn Palestinian armed resistance groups, just like I wouldn't condemn slaves shooting at their plantation masters.
Okay, so this is where it starts to get a little bit more controversial in the condoning of violence and murder, for example. I'd love to know your thoughts on this in the chat as well, because this is morally what a lot of this really does come down to, and it's oppressor versus oppressed. It certainly is in the case of Israel and Palestine, and obviously there have been even Hollywood films made about the type of thing that she was just talking about, with slaves turning on their masters. If you look at films such as Django Unchained, for example, the famous Quentin Tarantino film, and people were applauding in the aisles watching that one, especially the scenes at the end. Perhaps someday similar films, similar scenes will be made about the questions that we're facing today. But I'd love to know what you think about that point in particular. She lists a few more examples here now as well, and I think certainly most of them, if not all of them, are comparable to the current occupation and collective punishment that's happening in Gaza. Let us know what you think. And if you're watching on a replay, let us know in the comments. I'll try and get back to you as soon as I can.
Apparently,
Wow. Okay.
a lot of you would. I
That
wouldn't
is actually,
condemn Nat
I got to
Turner's
tell you,
rebellion. I
Rania,
wouldn't
I have to
condemn
tell you,
Geronimo.
I have to tell
Nat Turner's rebellion, Geronimo, famous Native American tribe leader, as she's about to say, she wouldn't condemn the Irish fighting the British. Of course, that's largely been sustained and peaceful since the Good Friday Agreement, of course, but these are historical examples that she's bringing up too. The Irish, of course, always show a large amount of support for Palestine, and as I've mentioned before, that's because that's out of more sympathy than empathy, if you know what I mean, having experienced similar things under the British Empire themselves. So what do you think of these examples that Ranya's putting out here?
Condemn the Irish fighting the British.
Great examples. Yeah, historically, when you talk about massive societal victories for groups of oppressed people, there are unfortunately so many examples, and nowadays, in the current age, these are things that we applaud. And I'll bring up Emmeline Pankhurst again. There's a statue of her in St. Peter's Square in Manchester, but if this was over 100 years ago, then she would have been utterly condemned for her actions at the time. I think it's also historically quite interesting that a lot of these people, Martin Luther King is another great example. During his time, he was voted the most hated man in America, and now there's a day, dedicated to him in the United States of America. There are streets named after him. There are schools named after him, etc. Revered. But at the time, he was utterly condemned. What you want to say or debate over the circumstances of his assassination is another point entirely. I won't get into that, but I think that's just very interesting how things turn out. Unfortunately, it can be far too little, far too late, and there are still those civil rights struggles happening, not just in America, but all over the world as well at the moment. But he really was a game changer. If it wasn't for people like him, then we would be now as a society. So, yeah, if you are watching on a replay, as we get towards the conclusion of the live stream, let us know what you think about any of the topics that have come up, any of the points that have been raised. As always, I'll do my level best to get back to you. But please do stay with us, live listeners, right through to the end of the stream. Just another more light-hearted clip I want to share with you now before we dip back into the lounge and say our goodbyes. This is the latest one from Larry and Paul, who feature regularly on the live streams. This is our latest one as well. Yeah, hope this gives you a rise, so to speak. I'm going to be playing this through YouTube because I very, very semi-professionally forgot to line it up with the clips, and I've just added it to my screen, so I'll just zoom in a little bit so you can see that a bit better. Bear with. Okay, get ready for another lovely story from Laurie and Paul. If you don't follow their content already, do check them out. Funny guys. They've been going for a while now.
Welcome to Broken News. There is rare praise for the British government for finally taking a stand against what some have called the tyranny of marauding disabled people and the mentally unwell. Ministers say that for too long, people with life-limiting illnesses and mental health issues such as anxiety and depression have been taking the piss. Our reporter has more.
For decades, some people have outrageously claimed that having disabilities or long-term illness somehow impacts on their ability to earn a living. And now the government is clamping down. Ministers say disabled people are claiming millions of pounds a week each just to sit at home and fap themselves into a sticky puddle to Dickinson's Real Deal. In a statement, the Prime Minister called it sick note culture. He added that just because you've had a leg and a couple of arms off, you could still be a useful member of society by working on a construction site, for example. He says those with massive and frequent epileptic fits could drive big lorries across the country or operate massive cranes. And those who have been sectioned because of frequent psychotic episodes could be released to work as a Home Secretary, for example. Senior MPs have also said that despite some drama queens taking their own lives, illnesses such as anxiety, depression and OCD are basically fake, and that so-called sufferers should man up, woman up or non-binary up. The clampdown is expected to save the government around £100,000 a year, enough to fly David Cameron to as many as 1 meetings in his big new jet. Back to you.
What a lovely story. That's all from Broken News. You're up to date.
Yeah, bang on. It's not rich people. It's not Rishi Sunak's short haul helicopter flights, private jet flights that are the real waste of money here in this country. It's people choosing to be disabled, of course. I'm sure that anybody who's afflicted by any disability wouldn't rather be able to get by, to be able to work for a living. I'm sure it's just the sort of choice, the lifestyle choice, as believe who was it? For homeless people. Was it Suella Braverman? Anyway, the same thing goes for disability as well, and the fact that they're trying to force so many disabled people back into work is just beyond reality, beyond reprehension, however you want to put it. It really is. So great stuff from Larry and Paul there. That's the most recent one, in case that one passed you by. Do give them a follow on YouTube as well. Let's dip back into the lounge and we'll see the show out.
100 journalism professors at elite universities across the country are asking.
No, we've already had that. As much as it is worth watching again, please do just scroll back if you want to watch it. Been going for nearly a couple of hours now, and I'm up quite early tomorrow, so best be heading off, guys. But you have been fantastic as always, you lovely people. Thanks a lot for being here this evening. Thanks a lot for all of the messages in the chat. Thanks for keeping it civil, as always, polite and cordial. You lovely, charming people. Brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, let's just go back into the lounge for a final watching of Keep On Do, and I'll be back with you tomorrow night, of course, live again for PMQs sometime between 7 and 9. Keep an eye out on the community chat for confirmation about that, or hit the notification bell in case. Do them both in case one doesn't work, just to make sure that you don't miss it. And we'll be catching up with Keith and Rishi in the Commons, as always, every Wednesday. And I should be back onto the main live stream schedule for Sunday next week. Apologies for the change in schedule this week. As I said at the top of the show, just had a last minute change of plans. So again, it's been wonderful to have you. I'll be seeing you soon. Hope you get through Hump Day quite well, and I'll be seeing you about the same time tomorrow, hopefully, for PMQs. But until next time, take care, everyone. My Lefty, I'll be seeing you soon. Good night. Oh, don't worry, H. Lukel, if you're a bit late, you can just skip back to the beginning of the video, thanks a lot for joining us late anyway. And before I do actually properly leave, just a final thanks to Mithril for those 10 gifted memberships as well. Hope those new members enjoy your perks. I'll stick you on the scrolling members list that I'm going to be putting at the end of the videos as well. I'll make sure that those 10 members are on. So keep an eye out for yourselves on the upcoming content. And see you soon, everybody. Sleep well. Good night. Don't let the Tories bite you.